I work as an archivist at St. Agnes Monastery Archive in upstate New York. The job pays modest wages, enough to cover my small apartment's rent and the student loans from my history degree. At 42, divorced with no kids, my goals stay simple. I want to finish cataloging the monastery's records, publish a quiet paper on medieval rituals, maybe snag a tenure-track spot at a community college. Life feels steady amid dusty stacks and flickering fluorescents, even if my ex-wife's occasional calls remind me of old arguments over money and time. That changed with the exorcism ledgers. They arrived in a locked oak chest during a routine inventory. Father Elias, the head archivist, handed me the key with a wary glance. Old records from the 17th century onward. Handle with care, Michael. The ledgers smelled of aged vellum and candle wax, pages brittle as autumn leaves. I started digitizing them, line by line, my laptop humming softly in the vaulted reading room where shadows pooled like forgotten prayers. Most entries proved predictable. Possession dates, symptoms, banishment outcomes. Failures outnumbered successes 3-1. But patterns emerged under magnification. Successful rituals shared anomalies absent from official doctrine. Holy water droplets fell at precise 7-degree angles from the aspergillum. Pauses between Latin phrases lasted exactly 13 seconds. Incense smoke swirled in leftward spirals, not the standard rite. No priest noted these. They acted on instinct, or so the text claimed. Curiosity hooked me. I built a database, Excel sheets blooming into custom software. Every variable logged. Droplet trajectory, phrase timing, candle flicker rates. Nights stretched long. My apartment grew littered with printouts. Coffee mugs ranged like ritual circles. Sleep fled as data sang its siren song, rhythms pulsing like a hidden heartbeat beneath the numbers. Bills piled. My ex called once, voice tinny through the receiver. You're obsessed again, Mikes. I hung up, fingers flying over keys. The perfect protocol crystallized after weeks. A synthesis of every success. Water at 7 degrees, 13-second gaps, left spirals, phonetic stresses on the 5th syllable of exorcizo te. I tested it first on paper simulations, then whispered it alone in the archive after hours. Lights dimmed oddly, a chill threading the air like invisible fingers. Success felt electric. No entity appeared, but peace settled, profound as dawn after storm. Father Elias noticed my haggard eyes. Take a break, Michael. I couldn't. The protocol demanded field testing. The monastery hosted a minor case that month, a young novice troubled by nightmares. I volunteered to assist, slipping my optimized notes to the officiating priest. He followed them unwittingly. The rite concluded flawlessly. The novice woke serene, praising divine intervention. Whispers spread. More cases arrived. Requests poured in. Bishops phoned, voices urgent across crackling lines. I refined the protocol further, microns of adjustment yielding flawless results. Possessions ended mid-chant. Victims rose calm, eyes clear as mountain streams. My paper took shape, footnotes gleaming with data. Tenure dreams shimmered closer. But unease crept in, subtle as fog off the Hudson. The first hint came during a routine follow-up. The novice, now recovered, volunteered at the archive. As she shelved books, her shadow stretched wrong, elongating like taffy pulled taut. She smiled at me, teeth too even, voice lilting in perfect 13-second cadences. Thank you for the help, Michael. Chills danced my spine, rhythmic as the protocol's pulse. More signs followed. Healed victims gathered near the monastery, drawn by invisible threads. They spoke in unison during casual talk, phrases syncing flawlessly. One former patient, a farmer from the valley, knocked on my apartment door at midnight. His eyes held no recognition, only a glassy precision. The rite was perfect, he murmured, breath sinking to my heartbeat. I barred the door, heart hammering, but locks felt flimsy as paper wards. Terror built gradual, brick by suffocating brick. The database revealed the truth one stormy night. Cross-referencing failures showed inverse patterns. Imperfect angles banished demons. Precision invited them, threading entities into fresh hosts like parasites seeking flawless soil. My protocol did not expel. It summoned relocating horrors with surgical grace. Victims carried them now, walking vessels of shadow, their calm masks over seething depths. Escape proved an illusion. Doors stuck fast when I tried fleeing the archive. Phones hissed Latin phrases if I dialed help. Father Elias confronted me, face ashen. "What have you done?" His voice cracked mid-sentence, eyes flickering with unnatural calm. He joined them, body rigid, reciting the protocol in perfect rhythm. Shadows thickened, coiling like smoke from unseen sensors, inescapable as my own data trails. Nights blurred into chants I could not silence. The protocol echoed in my skull, demanding recitation. One stutter and pressure mounted, chest tightening like iron bands, breath rationed to 13-second gasps. The possessed circled my building, footsteps sinking in leftward spirals. They knocked in unison, voices weaving through walls. "Join the perfection, Michael. Your work endures." Last evening, I completed the final entry. The database now cataloged not exorcisms, but invitations. Entities multiplied, hosts serene in their infestation, spreading flawless rites to new towns. My apartment mirrors reflect not me, but them. Eyes precise, smiles metronomic, shadows pulsing behind glass. No scream breaches the rhythm. Only terror, absolute and grinding, as the protocol claims its architect. If you find this file amid the ledgers, delete it imperfectly. Smudge the screen. Stutter the words. Perfection binds what chaos might lose. Listen now. Their footsteps approach, flawless, eternal. My name is Claire Hensley, and I restore old books for a living. Not the glamorous kind you see in movies, with velvet gloves and museum galettes. No, I work in the back room of Haverford's Rare Books on Elm Street, the one with the leaky ceiling and the coffee pot that tastes like regret. I patch yellowed pages, rebind spines cracked like old bones, and catalog marginalia for collectors who pay just enough to keep my apartment rent from swallowing me whole. At 38, single, with a cat named Whiskers who ignores me half the time. My big dream was simple: save for a down payment on a small house, maybe plant a garden. Get out of this cycle of overtime and microwave dinners. That was before the grimoire. It arrived on a Tuesday, wrapped in butcher paper, no return address. The note read, 18th century occult text. Needs expert care, urgent. My boss, Mr. Haverford, grunted and shoved it my way. Handle it, Clara. Could be valuable. I carried it to my workbench under the flickering fluorescent, the leather cover cool and heavy as a promise kept too long. Dust motes danced in the air like tiny mourners. I opened it gently, ultraviolet light revealing faded ink that whispered secrets in Latin and symbols that twisted like smoke. The text itself held nothing special, just another demon-summoning tome from the Enlightenment era, full of predictable curses and herbal recipes. But the marginalia caught me. Tiny annotations in the borders, written in 3 inks: black iron gall, red vermilion, blue lapis. Microscopic variations, flecks no thicker than a hair, clustered in patterns too deliberate for random scribe notes. My magnifier trembled slightly in my hand, not from nerves, but from the thrill of discovery. I had always been the meticulous one, the girl who alphabetized her spice rack and timed her laundry cycles to the minute. This demanded precision, so I gave it. I started cataloging. Every dot, every flourish, every inconsistent stroke width. Days blurred into nights. Whiskers meowed at my empty chair, but I barely heard. Under the microscope, the inks formed sequences, not random. Read the red flecks first in order of density, then black by curvature, blue by alignment. It took 72 hours to decode the first phrase, attend the faithful in exactitude. For the weaver attends the flaw, a ritual instruction hidden in plain sight, visible only to someone who measured every particle. I should have stopped there, told Haverford it was too fragile, but perfection whispered back, what if I finished it? The full sequence spanned the book's edges, a spiral of micro signs leading to a central sigil on the final page. My notes piled high, grids of measurements down to the micron. Sleep came in fits, dreams of ink bleeding into my veins like rivers seeking the sea. The apartment smelled of glue and solvent now, even in the kitchen. Bills stacked unopened. My garden savings jar sat untouched, mocking me. One midnight, alone with the magnifier's blue glow, I read the sequence aloud. Phonetically flawless, each syllable timed to the second, as the marginalia demanded. The sigil ignited not with flame, but with shadow, a coiling absence that drank the light from my lamp. It spoke, not in words, but in pressure, a voice like velvet over broken glass. You have woven true, restorer. Now worship with the same measure. At first, it felt like reward. The weaver, it called itself, an entity of threads and flaws, summoned by precision alone. It promised clarity, focus, the house I craved. All it asked, daily prayers and exact intonation, sigils drawn with a quill dipped in my own mixed inks, replicated atom by atom. I tried. God, I tried. My hand shook on the first prayer, a half-second off rhythm. Pain followed, not sharp, but eroding, like sandpaper on bone. My fingers stiffened, joints locking in subtle misalignment. I corrected it next time, measuring my breath with a metronome. Success brought euphoria, visions of my future home blooming in my mind. But perfection escalated. Prayers doubled, then tripled. Sigils grew fractal, each line branching into sublines demanding submeasurements. One phonetic slip, a millimeter's deviation, and degradation crept further. My spine curved a fraction, forcing me to hunch like an old woman. Whiskers avoided me now, eyes wide at shadows that lingered too long. The weaver's presence thickened the air, a rhythmic pulse like a heart woven from wire. It watched from corners, threads of darkness stitching across walls, inescapable as my own obsession. Nights became terror. I chanted under the kitchen light, voice raw, quill scratching paper until it bled ink and skin alike. A sigil faltered once, ink blob too wide by microns. Agony bloomed in my legs, muscles atrophying in waves, leaving me crawling to the workbench. The weaver murmured approval only for flawlessness, its form half glimpsed, spindles of shadow spinning fates from human imperfection. It fed on errors, grew stronger, escape, laughable. Doors stuck, locks turned by invisible hands. Phone lines hummed with its voice if I tried to call Haverford. Finish the worship, Clara. Perfection is your chain. Haverford came finally, pounding after 2 weeks of silence. I heard him through the door, voice muffled by threads now veiling every exit. Clara, you alive in there? The weaver silenced him with a sigh, wind like tearing silk. My prayers stuttered now, tongue thick, body a map of escalating ruin, vision blurring at edges, lungs tightening with each imperfect breath. Yet I continued, metronome ticking doom, sigils sprawling across floors like veins of a dying god. Last night, the final sequence revealed itself. Not salvation, but completion. The weaver demanded total replication. My entire body is canvas, every pore sigil point, drawn in ink mixed from my fading life. I began, quill steady despite trembling limbs, terror absolute as its threads encircled me. No scream escaped. Only rhythm, chant, measure. The apartment fades now, walls dissolving into infinite marginalia, my form unraveling into perfect script. If Haverford breaks in, tell him the book chose well. Precision summons what cannot be unbound. Listen close in the silence. You might hear the weaver spinning, waiting for your first flawless flaw. Dr. Elise Moran liked to believe precision was a form of compassion. To her, the scalpel served not as an instrument of harm but of mercy. Its sharpness promised that pain would prove brief. Error held no place in the body's fragile theater. Her colleagues at St. Bartholomew's Hospital called her the Machine. She accepted the nickname as praise. Machines did not tremble. They did not doubt. They did not falter when the room filled with beeping monitors and wet breaths. Machines stayed pure. But lately, the cuts did not seem right. The thought appeared first as a whisper during a gallbladder removal. Elise drew her scalpel along the skin, steady as always. Yet something in her hand hesitated. She felt it as not fear, but as dissatisfaction. The wrongness hummed quiet as the air conditioner. Her mind sketched dozens of invisible lines across the patient's body. Each line promised more correctness than the last. She could see it faintly gleaming beneath the wrong incision. The perfect one waited. Afterward, she stared at her hands in the scrub sink. Water rolled like mercury across her glove. The hands showed no trembling, exactly. They felt more alive. They wanted to try again. For days, the thought lingered. She replayed surgeries in her head. She traced them step by step, cut by cut, angle by impossible angle. She imagined where the scalpel should have gone. Her mind turned into a looping reel of anatomy, precision, and silent corrections. The corrections layered atop memory like translucent film. Sleep grew elusive. She found herself in her townhouse after midnight. She illuminated the kitchen counter with surgical lamps ordered online. In the polished steel reflection, her face looked unfamiliar. It appeared hungry in a way she did not recognize. The first incision stayed small, near her left wrist. She chose a tiny line where no one would notice. She wanted only to test the angle she had envisioned. The blade's reflection looked perfect as it broke skin, clean, exact. She remained clinical, careful, meticulous. "It's just a simulation," she murmured aloud. She dressed the wound expertly. A strange calm followed, as though she had corrected a misalignment only she could see, but perfection proved greedy. Days later, she caught herself sketching human musculature obsessively. The drawings covered napkins, notebook covers, even her palm. She began collecting mirrors from thrift stores. She lined her apartment with them until reflections multiplied around her like silent observers. Each face in the glass seemed to study her with professional interest. Each judged her work. When she looked into their many eyes, she saw mistakes. Every feature of her body began to feel misaligned. The arch of her lip shifted wrong. The seam of her jaw pulled uneven. The slope beneath her collarbone dipped too far. She started marking potential improvements in faint blue pen. She marked them the way she used to mark incision sites on patients. One night, standing before the mirror, sterile gloves snapped into place. Elise exhaled through her mask. The scalpel gleamed under the surgical lamp like liquid silver. "This will be perfect," she said softly. Her precision had always served as her gift. Now she would apply it to herself. The act became devotion to flawless symmetry. No more trembling patience. No more imperfect flesh. Only her hand and her design. Each night afterward turned into a lesson in devotion. She worked in silence. She sterilized instruments. She measured proportions. She noted healing rates. She kept records on lined paper as neat as hospital charts. But her eyes grew hollow. Her breath shallowed. She stopped answering calls from the hospital. They sent concerned messages. "Take time off if you need. You've been overworked." The messages went unanswered. Elise felt no overwork. She felt refined. Back at the hospital, another surgeon found her notes inside a locker. Endless diagrams sliced the human form into mathematical sequences. Anatomy looked like a puzzle with one correct solution. Neighbors noticed lights glowing past dawn. The glows moved in slow, deliberate arcs across curtained windows. Sometimes, if you stood close enough, you could hear the quiet hum of a medical vacuum, or the clink of glass against steel. Inside, Elise began to notice changes, frightening ones. Her reflection had multiplied too many times. When she looked into one mirror, she saw her face blink a fraction too early. In another, her hand twitched before she moved. These showed no errors of perception. They served as rehearsals of correction. She no longer remembered which face stood as the original. Perhaps they all drafted something better. The whispers once guided her hand in the operating room. Now they spoke continuously, soft yet commanding. They curled around her thoughts like tendrils. They told her perfection had always marked her purpose. Her bones carried a design not yet revealed. One evening, she prepared for the final operation. She laid out her tools with precision: antiseptic, scalpel, gloves, mirrors, sutures. The mirrors surrounded her workspace. They angled to reflect every surface. As she worked, the whispering grew clearer. Layered voices murmured in the rhythm of her heartbeat. Perfect form, perfect cut, perfect you. The intensity built until she thought the sound came from within the walls. Every mirror flickered. Each showed slightly different angles of her body. One angle proved more symmetrical, another more refined, all the more still. Elise felt her pulse between her fingers, strong and quick. It urged her forward. She took one measured breath, one precise movement, then silence. Morning came with gray light seeping through the curtains. Instruments lay arranged in perfect lines. No surgeon remained among them. Only mirrors filled the room. Each held her face, identical, coldly serene. Each gazed an infinite reflection. Hospital staff finally entered the townhouse. They found the apartment pristine. Every surface stood scrubbed. Antiseptic smell hung thick, almost reverent. Her records lay stacked by the sink, procedures completed, improvements achieved. None could find a trace of Elise herself. Only her reflection remained, trapped in those many mirrors. Each froze mid-motion as though still performing some unseen operation. Anyone who looked too long swore they saw her hand still moving. Halfway through another incision that did not yet exist,